Letting Go at Chateau Duveaux is a podcast hosted by myself, Tommy, a queer millennial who spent the last 7 years in intense therapy, unlearning the past so I could finally move forward. I'm here to share what I've uncovered, what I'm still healing, and to help others like me find their voice, their courage, and their freedom. This is a space for truth, release, and becoming. Welcome to the Chateau. In this episode of Letting Go at Chateau Duveaux, Tommy explores the quiet and constant ways society teaches gay men to shrink, delay, or abandon their potential. Join me for this next episode on why gay men fail to launch. What happens when the fire in you is dimmed before you even have a chance to shine or understand what your talents are that would make you shine? We're going to talk about that today in the second episode of Letting Go at Chateau Duveaux. So buckle up and get ready. So I was running the other day, and my best ideas come to me when I'm on a run. And I had an idea for a post. What I didn't realize is after I had made the post, I started thinking about, wow, I have to incorporate what I just said into my podcast episode. I already knew what I was talking about, for my podcast episode, but I realized I had to incorporate this post. And the post, if you go to my social media, it's called The Bike Theory. And I talk about how when we're growing up, when we're learning how to ride a bike, we have this childlike drive, this childhood ambition to learn how to ride that bike at any cost. We fall, we scrape our knee, we bleed, we cry. You might even bump your head. Like some people, I think, even break bones, but we still, as soon as you're healed, you get back up on that bike. And even sometimes when you're not healed, you get back up on that bike and you learn how to ride down the street without training wheels, right? When we become adults, though, I realized a lot of us lose that childlike ambition. Like you were never giving up on learning how to ride the bike without training wheels. So why did you give up on your dreams? I had to ask myself that exact question within the last couple of years. And I really had to take a hard look at myself and why don't I do things for myself? Why am I constantly searching for validation? Why am I making myself smaller and allowing my light to be completely burnt out? And it all goes back to the bike theory. We, as time goes on with each year that passes, we get a little bit jaded. I remember being in high school and middle school, and if somebody wanted to call something stupid, they would use a gay slur. And so you're automatically, there's all these things around you. You might grow up with a religious family. You might grow up going to church every Sunday. You might grow up in a community where no one talks about being gay, or they talk about it in a very negative way and in a negative, using slurs. Or maybe your family doesn't talk about it. Maybe your family, has an issue with gay people. A lot of times you're with people and you might see somebody that's okay being themselves, and people automatically judge that when you were growing up. And so it just taught you like keep yourself small. Don't let anyone see. As a kid, kids are cruel, and sometimes even adults are cruel. And so we just want to belong. We don't want to have to deal with being that outcast, being that weirdo, being that loser, being that somebody that is a gay slur. You don't want to be called the gay slur. And that's how you view it. So you grow up around feeling that it's wrong, feeling that it's wrong to be yourself, feeling that it's wrong to own who you are. I loved clothing, I loved fashion, but I remember a lot of times making myself smaller in my choices when I was growing up because I didn't want to have to go to school and be called the F word. And that did happen. And I'll get more into that in a second. But when you grow up feeling that it's wrong to be who you really are, it does a lot to you. And in those formative years, it's really hard. And you put your head down and you learn to make yourself smaller. What that can become as you get older, especially if you stay in that atmosphere, it can make you make the wrong choices. It can make you go down a path that really isn't right for you. It can sometimes make you choose to get into a relationship that's not for you. And so this whole episode is about why sometimes gay men fail to launch. Why LGBTQ, some of us, fail to launch. I think I really failed to launch until I got into my 30s. And I think, I recently moved to New York a month and a half ago. And I feel like now is really when I'm starting to actually launch. And I think this is the right place for me, but I think I really avoided it. I think there's a lot of fear when you're told that you were wrong growing up. There's a lot of fear in not believing that your dreams are worthy or that you're even worthy. So, why do some gay men fail to launch? Or I keep saying gay men, but really this podcast is for queer individuals. You don't have to be a gay man. But I keep saying gay man because I'm a gay man. So, if you're any queer individual, I think that this could resonate. And even if you don't agree with the fail to launch bit, I'm talking about failing to launch in relationships, failing to launch in careers, and a lot of times, just in general, it's hard to have both, right? It's really hard to have both, and people talk about the struggle of thriving in both. But I find that when queer people fail to launch, there's a lot more behind it. It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you don't have a sense of direction. It's that growing up, you were never able to form your actual identity. The truth of the matter is, you were never able to grow up being yourself. You were never able to grow up being yourself in those formative years. You were always hiding. So while other people are over here and their, talents or interests are considered more mainstream, or they're very into sports and things that are considered cool growing up, you're over here feeling like, I don't really fit that narrative, but I feel like if I want to fit in, I have to find common ground with other people and not be myself, not show who I truly am. Not show that I love fashion, or maybe I want to dress a little bit more androgynous. Maybe I love makeup and I'm a male. Maybe I love hair and style and all of those things. But I feel like I can't really let that out completely without ridicule and feeling like I'm not okay. And listen, there are some people out there and I look back and I always envied some of these kids that were just fully themselves, no matter what, in front of everybody. Um, and they really had a hard path. They didn't care at a young age. They didn't care as kids. And so they said, I'm going to be myself and I don't care. I don't care if I don't fit in. They had the strength at a young age to say, I'm going to be me. And then those people tend to, I noticed, thrive going into adulthood. And if you're like myself, I think a lot of people did kind of assume that I was gay, but I wasn't saying it. And I did continuously make myself smaller. And in certain groups, I would change the sound of my voice so it didn't sound so gay. Yeah. That's a whole nother thing, probably for another story for another time. But I would do things like that. And so I went into adulthood and I really kind of stayed in the area that I grew up in. And I went into adulthood just continuing to feel like I have to fit everything that I saw growing up. And it really ended up really suffocating me. And I made myself really small. And I had to ask myself one day, in the last, couple of years, I was constantly doing things for other people. I look at my job and I burnt myself out in my last role and I was trying to be everything to everybody, and that's not effective. And it made me miserable. It sucked the life out of me. But I was constantly doing everything for everyone else. And I realized I gave up on my dream a long time ago. Why? Why did I do this to myself? And I remember my best friend saying to me, Tommy, you have so much talent. You're so smart. You are such an interesting person and you have so much to give. Why are you giving it to these people that don't care about you and that honestly don't treat you well? What are you doing? And it really hit me when he said that. It got me thinking about the fact that I chose to continue to make myself smaller into adulthood because I just felt like growing up, it was too scary to be myself. I was too afraid of the rejection. And I never ever felt like I fit. I always felt like an outcast. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people in the queer community felt that way. At the end of the day, as human beings, we just want to belong and we want to be treated respectfully, and all of us want to feel equal. And if you're able to hide yourself and be respected and feel equal and not feel ostracized, that's appealing to a lot of people. But it makes you shrink. It makes you smaller. And at the end of the day, it drains the life out of you. And I think you start to hit midlife going, how did I get down the road I've gone down? And I luckily had that realization before midlife. But it was really eye opening when I did have the realization that I'm putting myself last, and it's all because I need to feel validated. No one had ever told me that I'm okay. Um, I, I should take that back. My parents always did, but because of what was out, I think, around me growing up, I always just felt like my parents are only telling me that because I'm their kid. Now I see it much differently. I understand exactly what my parents were talking about, but it had to have actually been hard for them because they always, I think, saw who I was and saw my talent and saw what I could do. And I remember there being instances where my dad would say something to me and I'd be like, like he'd say something about what he could see me doing with my life or how much potential I really had. And it would always kind of like strike me as like, really? You see that? And now I think I see what they're talking about. But in the greater community that I grew up in, I just really honestly felt that no one had ever told me. I had always been sort of judged or ridiculed in some way. And so I want to get to a story that kind of helps make this make sense. I remember I grew up in a small community, and my dad was very much a pillar of that community, um, and very much a pillar of that community in a sense that people were a little like oddly obsessed with him, and I still think like they still are. It's weird, and I think it's weird. Love my dad, but it's like it's odd. I think that came with like some jealousy. Like I think there were like even adults that were sort of like just jealous of like the notoriety that my father got in the community that I grew up in and in the surrounding communities. And so I remember I was in class and the teacher was right there and this kid that was a total jerk to me. He was a bully to a lot of people, but he was really a bully to me and he was just a jerk. And I remember he said to me, your dad's so cool. And he's saying this very, very loud. I still remember he was so loud the way he was saying it. And I didn't understand, like, why are you being so loud? Because the entire class, including the teacher, and I think even an adult outside the classroom could hear. And he said, your dad is so cool. Like, your dad's amazing. I was like, okay, I get this all the time. Like, okay, great. And he's like, how did your dad end up with such a loser? And then he said loser and then incorporated a gay slur that starts with an F. So I think everyone, I'm not going to say it out loud, but I think everyone can tell what that is. So he said, how does your dad end up with such a loser F son? Like, how does that happen? Such a cool guy to end up with a loser F son like you. Nobody did anything. The teacher did nothing. Didn't send him to the office. Didn't even tell him to stop. Just kept going on about his business like nothing. Like nothing had just happened. I mean, this person said it, shouted it in the room. Like shouted it. And there was one girl, he went to go keep going, and there was one girl who I'll never forget this because her and I were friends, but we weren't close. When he went to go continue, she did stop him and she said, you're done. But it was another girl my age. The actual adult teacher didn't do anything. And there was another teacher that wasn't that far, like outside of the classroom, that I'm pretty sure heard it. And no one cared. No one cared. And that happened to me actually on more than one occasion where something was said in front of adult and the adult didn't do anything. I remember feeling really early on that like I am different. I am not okay being myself. And so I went into adulthood seeking validation because of several instances that were like that. I will say this, I had actually a really good group of girlfriends and guy friends in high school. If that would have happened in front of either of those groups, it would have been an issue. And nobody would do it in front of those groups. But if I was away from those groups, it happened. And I even remember teachers sometimes like snubbing me. It just, I don't think that I'm not the only queer person that had, maybe my situation with my father is different, but I'm not the only queer person that had some of these instances happen where we were treated poorly by adults and children growing up and made to feel like I am not okay, I am not worthy. And so you go into adulthood searching for validation in every single way you can, and you fail to launch because you keep going to search for validation in what you already know, which is you don't know yourself, So you're searching for validation with other people that don't know themselves. And you're constantly in this loop of just sort of chaos. You're with people that don't know themselves. You end up going into sometimes toxic jobs where you're treated poorly, and you're constantly trying to say, like, pick me, I'm okay, like I'm gonna do everything I can to be perfect. You're never going to be perfect. No human being is perfect. But you were taught at a young age that you're just not okay. So you're constantly searching for validation in all of the wrong places, and it sucks the life out of you. And you get to a certain point where you feel like it's literally, like, you feel like it's going to kill you. And that's, I think, a lot of times where people say, I am done. And I think people have two choices to make. You either curl up in a ball or die, or say, I'm going to show all of these people what I'm made of. And then I think you get beyond that, where you just say, I'm going to show myself what I'm made of. I don't care what anyone else thinks anymore. How do you get there, though? How do you get there, though, when you've always shrank yourself, when you've always been told that your flair or your voice or your this, your walk, your that is just not okay? How do you get out of these toxic paths that you've allowed yourself to go down? You've been performing your whole life, a character. You have been constantly chasing stability over your own passion. You have become a master of dimming your light. The first thing is to realize I've dimmed my light. I let my dreams go. Own it and say, I want something different. Tell the people that are close to you in your life, this is what's going on with me. I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to love myself in the way that I should love myself. You have to own that and admit that, and start to walk away from the shame, because you had shame growing up. You felt shame. I wish I would have brought that up earlier, but you felt shame your entire life growing up. And now you feel shame for never having been truly who you were. So there's shame attached to who you truly are, but there's shame attached to never allowing yourself to be truly who you were. And you just feel like you're never going to get away from the shame. Own the fact that your light was dimmed. It wasn't entirely your fault, but now you have to take responsibility for your life. And you have to call out that you feel shame. You have to say it. Say it to yourself first, and then say it to someone else. You have to call out that I have dimmed my light. You have to own it first. Say it out loud. Talk to somebody. Find a therapist. Find some outlet so that you can begin to express yourself and actually feel your feelings. I always repressed my emotions. It got me nowhere. And if you're like me, understand that until you own accountability for the path you've decided to end up taking, you can't go the rest of your life saying, well, these people did this to me. Great, they did. It sucked. But as an adult, you have to take responsibility and say, I'm not going to allow that to keep me down anymore. And I'm going to relight that flame. You have to take accountability. You have to say it out loud. And until you do that, you will not see any change. For me, it was finally seeing that in a certain situation, I was being treated horribly. It was toxic. And I stood up for myself finally. And sometimes you stand up for yourself and you get an answer no matter what. You either get an answer from somebody that I'm going to do better and I'll fix this, or you get lip service that I'll do better, but you don't see the change in the actions. So you either get lip service and actions that actually show you that there's going to be a change, or you get lip service and absolutely no action. And you continue to stand up for yourself, and you find that now you've become a problem because you've stood up for yourself. That is when you know we're done. You move on from that toxic situation and give people the chance to be better. But if they show you with their actions they're not going to be better, walk away from the situation. Whether that's a relationship that's killing you, whether that's a job that's killing you, that's toxic. I don't care what it is. Give people a chance, but as soon as you know, and you can tell pretty quickly, once you start standing up for yourself, people's true colors come out when you stand up for what's right. Walk away once you know what you've got in front of you. For me, it was walking away from a toxic situation and saying, I'm going to go after my dream, no matter what that risk is. And I moved to New York City. And it's still scary some days, but I'm not looking back. So I want to hear from you. I'd love some engagement. And tell me what your thoughts are on what I just talked about. I'm trying not to make these podcasts too long because it is just like a lot of me talking. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know that somebody wants to watch me for 30 minutes talk. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, tell me what you think. Did you make yourself shrink growing up as an LGBTQ queer individual? Maybe you're not queer. Maybe you're not a member of the LGBTQ community, but you somehow resonate with some of this. And you shrank yourself. What has that done for you? Have you realized that you shrank? Where have you made yourself smaller just to fit in? Where have you made yourself smaller just because the world said it was safer? What would it look like to start trusting yourself again? What do you think that would take? And can you look at yourself right now and say, I don't even know that I do trust myself? I was there, but I can tell you that I trust myself now. But it took all the work and taking accountability for my own life to get to a point where I could trust myself. So tell me, do you trust yourself right now? What is it going to take for you to trust yourself enough to realize that your dreams aren't too big and that you can go after them? So would love some comments, would love to know what you guys think. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, breathe, remember that it's okay to feel, and start to let go when you're ready.